released in 2022. This 1/6 scale Mai Shiranui from the King of Fighters 97 is Tunshi Studio's take on perhaps one of the most celebrated female gaming characters of all time. Since her introduction in Fatal Fury 2, this scantily clad ninja had not only been in almost every single entry for the King of Fighters, she's also been the subject of a cosplay and cultural phenomenon, pioneering the advent of jiggle physics in video games, and guest appeared in a whole host of crossover and spin-off titles with much welcome. That is except for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Apparently, Nintendo deemed Mai's sex appeal to be so overwhelming, she was yeeted straight out of contention for even a background cameo. So with such a stacked character, one can only hope that Tunshi Studios got what it takes to contain all of Mai's charisma and flamboyance in a mere action figure. Buckle up everyone, because this review
is for good boys and girls of many different ages.
Before diving into the portraits, I want to address the uneven heights of the neck pegs between these two head sculpts. For some reason, the neutral face on the left sits a tad higher, which to me looks a little awkward. Otherwise, both of these portraits are very on point relative to Mai's appearance all the way back in KOF in 97. My only nit here is that the difference between the two portraits are rather mild. It's hard to see on camera, but the face on the right has a slightly opened mouth, which I do prefer as it adds to the allure. Beyond that, I'm not sure if both of these portraits are all that necessary, and that's a statement I feel really ungrateful to make, because there's really nothing wrong here. It's just that compared to Tunshi Studio's previous releases, the alternate head sculpts all have exciting differences that warrant their inclusion. Anyways, the hair sculpt is fantastic. Mai's face is framed perfectly by the front bangs. There's a good flow and definition to the texture, along with these soft plastic side bangs to complete the profile. The ribbon on the ponytail is also made of soft rubber, and it's abundant with that gritty fabric texture. There's a good flow to the actual ponytail as well, with some scattering strands near the tip. The whole piece is sculpted and articulated, with a somewhat limited up and down swing, and a fully unencumbered side swing, which works well given the shape of the hair. Now you might be thinking the costume section's gonna be short, because Mai's not wearing a whole lot, but you'd be surprised. Just like in the games, the signature sleeveless uwagi perfectly accentuates Mai's physique. The fabric is somewhat elastic to cope with the fit, but I find the subtle seam lines around the shoulder to be the most clever. Now this is likely just bad luck on my copy, but the stitching around the bosoms is slightly busted, so I do apologize if some of that got into the shot. The hemp rope that Mai wears on her back is actually stitched together in the center to form a figure 8. I haven't encountered any problems with it, but Tunshi Studio still provided an extra just in case. While they're accurate to how Mai wears them, these hard plastic wristbands are really tight. They manage to stay on even after the hands are removed, which makes me a little concerned about the long-term effects on the rubber. So use caution as to not mangle the rubber when you twist these. As for this super elastic waistband, Tunshi Studio managed to put in a slight wrinkle in the middle, which is a clever way to imply tension. And the band is of course complete with a set of decorative twin tails. I'm loving how neat and tidy this knot is in dividing the colors, as the symmetry was much easier to execute in the form of pixel art. The decorations themselves are pretty hefty though, so even if the tails are inlaid with a single wire, they aren't enough to sustain themselves in the air. The uwagi bottoms out with this game-accurate swimsuit-style red thong. And finally, the soft-soled tabi is of the same split-cut design as Blue Mary. And thank goodness, the fit on the ankles aren't as tight as the wrists. These fully sculpted feet are really the way to go, as the fabric counterpart would look real messy and makes the figure too clumsy to stand. As usual, I'll cover a few highlights instead of going over all the articulations, as these TBLeague bodies are already brilliant by default. Lucky for Mai, the few pieces of clothing she has poses no hindrance to the movements whatsoever, so you can reap all the benefits of the trademark poses that TBLeague has to offer. Mai can do almost a full side split, as well as an actual front-to-back split, and if she's standing, you can convert that into a straight-up high kick. Not bad for a character whose name literally means to dance. I haven't spent so much time admiring the simple elegance of a pose since my review for the Moon Goddess figure by Lucifer and Bilushan. One final remark is that the body does track a lot of dust, which is especially a problem for Mai, since she leaves so much of herself exposed, so try to keep her in an enclosed display whenever possible. For a fighting game character, the accessories are actually quite plentiful. Starting with the hand parts, even though there are no neutral poses available, I'm still glad that the handguards are sculpted into each option, so they're easy to swap, and no futzing is required, while looking consistent across all poses. Next is a traditional hand fan. The red frame and paper top are authentically rustic, with a gold binding at the bottom that's attached to a decorated tassel. And of course you can open this thing up like a real fan. It's quite impressive that Tunshi Studio was able to make this work for this scale. Next is yet another fan, but this one is fully sculpted, except for the tassel. The beautiful flowing red flames here mimic the desperation form of the kachoseng. But unlike the Ryu by Iconic Studios, this thing doesn't have its own stand, so you'll have to get creative to pose with it. Speaking of which, the display stand once again has only one support stem option. You can curve it downwards for standing poses, but at this length, aerial poses is where this thing truly shines. And saving the best for last, no expenses were spared for this magnificent umbrella. Unlike the fan, there's only a sculpted version in favor of its rigidity. The paint app is so precise that none of the bamboo ribs bleed over into the red panels. And better yet, the panels have this subtle sheen and slightly bumpy surface, reminiscent of the waxy paper that's often used to make these kind of umbrellas. Even the tip has its own fabric-like texture. The 3 kanji characters here read Nippon Ichi, meaning Japan's best, which is often heard in Mai's victory stance. The underside is no slouch either. Each of the stretchers are individually affixed, forming this meticulous support. The red shaft is made of metal for its strength, with a consistently styled tassel just beneath the handle. Insert the shaft through the center like so, and the whole umbrella comes to life. This thing is no flimsy garnish on top of a cocktail, but is instead an absolutely gorgeous complement to the stunning beauty that is Mai Shiranui. I think you can already guess who's gonna show up for the size comparison. Nope, not him. I'm talking about Haomaru and Blue Mary by Tunshi Studio, of course. The lineup has been amazing so far, and Tunshi Studio seems to be going strong with the SNK license. Next we have Terry Bogard by Worldbox, and KOF 14 Mai Shiranui 2P color version by Genesis Emi, the costume for which was swapped to Super Duck's classic red version. You might have also noticed the height disparity, and since Mai's only 5'4", my point goes to Tunshi Studio for accuracy. The head sculpt for the Genesis version was made a little bigger, so they used a taller and wider body to cope with the scale, and the proportions are still accurate to their relative versions. The alternate portrait for the Genesis version is much more expressive, with the ability to bite down on a prop fan, which is still really awesome. And for a quick Capcom vs SNK2 crossover, we have the usual Chun-Li by Medicom, and the blessing to this hobby that is the Iconic Studios Ryu. After seeing what they have accomplished, I can only wish that Iconic Studios and TBLeague would give Chun-Li a go, so these first ladies of their respective franchises can go toe-to-toe again, but this time as 6-scale figures of equal caliber. So there you have it, the 1/6 scale Mai Shiranui from the King of Fighters 97 by Tunshi Studio. The choice of portraits is somewhat mild for someone like Mai, who's brimming with a bright, flirtatious, and cheerful personality. But this release makes up for it with an undeniable likeness, a set of terrific duds, and some delightful accessories. And between all the licensed Mortal Kombat, SNK, and Capcom releases, 2022 has been a really good year for fighting game figure collectors, and it looks like the fun will continue well into 2023.